This show is part of the Head Stuff Podcast Network.
Welcome, gather round the fireside and listen to a tale of Fionn McCool, Cuchulainn, Deirdre of the Sorrows, Gráinne Wail. From giants right down to fairies, of both the drooping and solitary, and ghosts who are sometimes scary. Anything goes by the fireside. Yeah. Fireside, the Puka Fireside, the Marrow Fireside. Kings and queens fighting heroes, don't you run from the fun, there's no need to hide. Sit by the fireside. Fireside.
Hello and welcome to Fireside, the Irish storytelling podcast. Each episode of Fireside, we take a story from folklore or mythology, retell it, have a chat about the tale itself and about the craft, the culture and the history of storytelling. My name is Kevin C. Olahan. I am your host and your Fireside Bard. Welcome to episode 241 of Fireside. Today on the Irish Storytelling Podcast, we continue our look at the Bram Stoker collection of fairy tales Under the Sunset. This is my adaptation of the wonderfully named and wonderful tale of the Shadow Builder. But first, if this is your first podcast, you're very welcome. Listen to the last couple, at least in the Bram Stoker series, if this is your first one. Don't have to necessarily listen to them all, but I do think there's a sense and a world that's built in these tales that benefits from listening to the others. But if you're a returning listener, you know this already. Thank you so much for your continued support. All the way you can usually support the podcast. You can follow me over on Instagram at FiresideBard. Email me at thefiresidebard@gmail.com. Buy my book, Garden Sea, A Neo-Myth of Home, my poetry collection from the Head Stuff website. We can ship all around the world. And you can support the podcast directly by joining Headstuff Plus at headstuffpodcast.com, where you can pay €5 a month or more if you want to gain access to bonus materials for all the podcasts on the Headstuff Podcast Network. Most importantly, just to keep Fireside going. And thank you to all those who continue to do so. I am recording this episode immediately after recording the last one of... I just recorded it 10 minutes ago. What was it? It was the tale of The Invisible Giant, of course, and I hope you enjoyed that. Maybe you're listening to this straight after, because I'm going to upload them both at the same time. So it is now officially my birthday, and I only say that because it's really nice after the long gap of not doing this podcast for various reasons, both personal and professional, to be doing something that I do as a job, but most importantly, something that I love so much and brings me so much joy to do, to begin a new year and to begin my birthday with doing something like this brings me joy. So I wanted to share that with you because I hope that these stories bring you even half as much of the comfort and the drive that they give me. So you're very welcome, and thank you for listening. But to get down to this story for this week, we have this wonderful name. If you're like sliding through, I was thinking when I saw this name, if you were like scanning through podcasts, through episodes of Fireside that you hadn't listened to, and if you're the kind of person like I am sometimes with podcasts where if there's loads of them, I'll just look for one that is really good, it has a title that'll jump out, and that's certainly how sometimes I pick stories in like really big comprehensive collections that I can't possibly get through all of. This is sometimes a method I would use where I would just look at like a shadow an image that's really evocative, and that was the Shadow Builder straight away for me. It was probably the most dense certainly in the original version, the Stoker edition, than the other stories. So this wasn't one that was as easily adapted as the last story, but I still took great pleasure in it, in sifting through it and streamlining it and creating my own version of this tale. And we will, of course, chat more about it afterwards, but we'll get right down to it. This is the tale of the Shadow Builder on Fireside. the Shadow Builder. Far beyond the land under the sunset, the lonely Shadow Builder sits alone in his kingdom of dark clouds. Around him are the shadows of all things that have passed. Everything that casts a shadow in our world passes through the threshold into the realm of the Shadow Builder. All events, great and small, tragic and joyful, from the highest king to the lowest dog, circle in the clouds of the Shadow Builder, in what is known as the Procession of the Dead Past. No other beings dwell with the lonely Shadow Builder, but the Shadow Builder can visit mortals in their dreams and show them images and visions of the procession of the dead past. There the living can see the lost. Heartbreaks can be stirred up once more. This can bring great joy and sorrow in equal measure to those visited in dreams by the Shadow Builder. Because the Shadow Builder, no more than any mortal, has any control over the future, or even of the present. Shadows can only pass through the threshold once they have occurred. Having witnessed millennia of love and war, creation and murder, euphoria and despair, the Shadow Builder has long since become numb and disassociated with the affairs of the mortal world. But every so often, it might be once every 100 years, the Shadow Builder is moved to great pity and feels compelled to action. But even the Shadow Builder is limited in his domain, because the procession of the dead past does not contain the shadows of memory for long. Soon they melt away into the gate of dread, where they disappear forever. The Shadow Builder sits alone in his domain. Through the threshold, he begins to see the shape of a baby's foot, then a leg, a round belly, and finally an innocent and clueless face. The baby is taking his very first uneasy steps. 1, then 2, before the baby begins to fall. But through the threshold appear the hands of a mother, there to catch her son when he falls. That baby then stands once more. Turning, he walks again. 1, 2, 3 steps before falling once again into his mother's arms. The baby laughs. The mother cries tears of joy. Before the shadows of mother and child fade from the procession of the dead past and into the gates of dread. An insurmountable number of shadows proceed through the threshold before the Shadow Builder recognizes the same mother and child again. The child has grown into a young man. He wears the suit of a sailor. The mother embraces her son as before, but the son is called away, and the mother once again cries, but not the tears of joy as during the first steps, but the tears of uncertain loss. The Shadow Builder sees a large ship. Forming through the threshold is a storm cloud. Still invisible to those aboard, the cloud grows until the shadow engulfs the ship. Colossal waves meet thunderous clouds which drown out the cries of the sailors, who are swallowed by the sea. As the ship, the storm, and the sailors pass from the procession through the gates of dread, the Shadow Builder sees the young man surface from the sea and climb to the safety of a rock. He clings for dear life until the storm passes and the dawn appears. As the clouds disperse and the sun shines through, the lone surviving sailor sees the distant image of a coastline. Summoning all his remaining strength and determination, the sailor swims for dear life towards the distant shore. He is caught in the current, which sucks him down and swirls him around. The sailor accepts his fate. But the sea is merciful and spits the sailor upon the damp sand of the coastline. The sailor, the sand, and the coastline fade into the gates of dread. The shadow builder has become invested in the plight of the young sailor. Through the threshold, he sees the shadow of a mother, sitting alone, awaiting the return of her son. A return that is not guaranteed. Then the shadow builder sees the sailor, alive and awake. He finds food, fresh water, and the safety of a cave on top of a mountain. There he survives. The shadow builder may be immortal, but he knows how short and fragile are the lives of men. Seconds in the procession of the dead past are years in the land under the sunset. The young sailor has well and truly become a man. His beard has grown long, but he is not growing stronger. Every shadow is thinner, weaker. There is not much time, and even less hope. The shadow builder rises and moves through the threshold into the dreams of the sleeping mother. The shadow builder shows the mother the vision of her son, alive, but alone and starving on a barren island somewhere at sea. The mother is overjoyed to see her son, but the shadow builder knows that this is just a memory of the procession of the dead past. The shadow builder knows the son is dying and could be dead at any minute, but he does not know for sure because it has not happened yet. The mother awakes from the dream, certain that what she has seen is a sign. The shadow builder is not easily overwhelmed, but soon a myriad of shadows begin to emerge through the threshold of the mother, pleading at the feet of lords, kings, and shipbuilders, telling them of a vision she has seen. But the shadows pity, and some even laugh, but none believe, and none will help. On the mountainous island, the sailor no longer has the strength to leave his cave. From the threshold appears an old man. Before him is the mother, once again crying on her knees. But this time, the old man agrees to help her. More shadows, a ship, a crew, a voyage. The mother has only an image in a dream to guide them, but they take to the seas in search of her lost son. Days and weeks passed. Milliseconds for the shadow builder. The crew has checked. They know the name of the ship the sailor was on, when it left, when it was last sighted. They all heard rumors of that storm. A coastline appears. The mother recognizes the cliff, the mountain. The crew go ashore. The mother waits in her cabin for any word. A day later, the crew returns and hang their heads. They have found nothing. The shadow builder begins to see a foot emerge through the threshold. He knows this foot, having watched its every step. But this time, the foot is not moving. The sailor is about to die. Once more, one final time, the shadow builder enters the mother's dreams. She sees this shadow of her son swirling around the procession of the dead past, and immediately awakes with vigor. The mother demands the crew take her ashore. She leads them to the top of the mountain, and finally they find the cave. Inside, the mother at last sees her son again. But the son does not see her. He lies still, unmoving. The mother grabs the body of her boy, the boy she caught when he took his first steps, and begins to sob. It is too late. The Shadow Builder is rarely, if ever, moved to tears. But for this one moment, he lets out a sigh and hangs his head. The Shadow Builder can see the unmoving body of the dead sailor emerge through the threshold. Soon he will pass through the procession of the dead past and into the gates of dread. But then, the Shadow Builder sees another pair of hands emerging through the threshold. The hands of a grieving mother, reaching out for the body of her dead son. The hands grab the shadow of the dead body and pull the shadow back through the threshold. Things only pass through the threshold one way. They never return the other. But on this one occasion, the Shadow Builder realized that a mother's arms are even stronger than the grasp of death. The end. And that is the tale of the Shadow Builder on Fireside, and I hope you enjoyed it. This was a really, really interesting one to do. What I was thinking when writing this is a lot of people have said to me that they listen to Fireside going to bed, which is hardly surprising because like one of the main reasons I want to do this is these stories are best at night. The Celts believed it was bad luck to even tell any stories during the day. But that these should be bedtime stories, and I choose not to take it as an insult that people fall asleep to my voice. I take that as a great compliment. I fall asleep to many great voices, so I take it as a great compliment that people fall asleep to me, in the hopes that it is not out of boredom, but out of comfort. But this feels like a story that should be at night, that should be as you are entering the world of the dreams, that you may dream of the Shadow Builder. There were these three main phrases that are capitalized by Bram Stoker that were the ones to remember. It was like this: the Shadow Builder sits in this realm of clouds, and it's through the threshold that the shadows appear from the mortal world. And from the threshold, they enter into the procession of the dead past, a swirling world of clouds. And this is where all the images of all the things past appear, before finally fading into the gates of dread. These three wonderful terms, all capitalized each time Stoker brings them up. And loads of things come to mind from this. I'm reminded of any world of the dead, that you've, like Hades came to mind. Also, what really came to mind was Morpheus, was Dream from Sandman. I got a very Sandman vibe off the Shadow Builder, which I quite liked. And just what I also liked as well is, as I said, that because this is very Victorian, there is quite a Christian allegory to some of the earlier, I said, in the Rose Prince, we have like a very direct David and Goliath, biblical homage, shall we say, in it. But here, that's not the case. You could, of course, say that the Shadow Builder could be God, but I like the idea that all he sees is what's happened. And he can enter dreams to show people what they know has already happened. But he has no control whatsoever in what does happen and can only even see it once it already has occurred. And I thought that actually gave it like some momentum as a story, like the invisible giant moving slowly towards the city, the anticipation of when the shadow builder would see the next image of the sun. It reminded me of also of any job, like particularly in, like when I imagine medical professions, when I imagine doctors or any profession that sees death regularly, of how numb or how disassociated you might become after a while, and how you might eventually have to separate that, but that we as humans always will be affected from time to time by these things, even if they're things that have nothing to do with us and we have no control over. So I love the idea of this immortal being. It felt very ancient Greek, that the shadow builder is seeing everything, not just humans, but all animals, it's just everything that has ever happened. He is constantly seeing, swirling around in this procession of the dead past, this wonderful phrase, before passing on. But that every so often there's something that still gets him, that's something that he's still interested in and pities before he has to continue his charge of overseeing all of this and continuing to go onwards through time. And I'll be honest, I actually got quite emotional reading and writing this story, because it starts in such a beautifully sincere and simple place with this baby's foot. It like seeing the beginning of this relationship between mother and child that drives the story forward, beginning with that first step. This is this concrete memory. And I was constantly reminded of this as the mother loses her son to this voyage, and he ends up barren on this island, and that the shadow builder visits the mother, and she has to campaign and ask around, and eventually finds him, and he's already dead, and she literally reaches through the threshold into the realm of shadows and pulls his life back. I found it really, really strong. And from reading the biography on Bram Stoker, I tend to wonder if an influence for this story was the fact that Bram Stoker's wife and son Noel were in a boat accident. They were in a boat that sank, and they both nearly drowned. And I don't know. I'll have to check if this collection predates or postdates that. But if it postdates that, it's very hard to imagine how this wouldn't have influenced Bram Stoker, because he was at home, at work, and had no control over what had happened to his wife and his only child. And that, of course, adds another complete level of authenticity and potency to this story, with Stoker himself, the shadow builder. But we have this, I found this such a strong image of this creature, and I chose to write this story in the present tense, as most of these tales would be in the past. But this idea of the shadow builder being present, because he is just seeing everything as they have already happened, but it's his is always present. He sees no future. He only sees the past when it's already happened, and that's his present. And it reminded me when I was studying angelic texts in the poetry course I studied at the Oxford School of Poetry. I was doing research, and angels supposedly perceive all dimensions and time in a way that we do not. Angels experience time as past, present, and future simultaneously, which is something I found really, really interesting. And I imagine that the shadow builder sees that as well, except he has no vision of the future at all, but everything is constantly present, because all that is past is all that he can see. So all he has is his present of the past, if that makes sense. So it was a really interesting way to write it, and to write it just as like images. It's almost like it was notes, just like little words and images, like not a huge amount of detail, because there's a huge amount of action that happens, but they're only in shadows that the shadow builder sees. So they should just be shadows to you as a reader, to you as a listener, to just evoke and to get your own imagination visualizing all of these things, to fill in the gaps. And be interested if you saw these all as like black and white, to see them all as like literally like they were shadows forming entirely in black, like the Heartless in Kingdom Hearts, if anyone played that when they were a kid, or if they're like clouds, or if they are more spectral, or if you just see them as they appear in the real world, and if you see them in colour. And there was just a really lot to enjoy, and I found really interesting in adapting this one. So, of course, as always, I really hope you did as well, and look forward to hearing your thoughts. So please do let me know. You can follow me, or you can message me on Instagram at firesidebard. You can email me at thefiresidebard@gmail.com. Let me know your thoughts. And we have 4 more stories left of this Stoker collection, and then I have plans for going forward. But as always, if there's anything else you would like from the podcast, please do let me know. It's been a pleasure to tell you 2 stories now on my birthday, and I hope you enjoyed listening to them again, even half as much as I've enjoyed putting them together. So I will talk to you all next time. I'll see you all. You'll hear me all. I should sleep now. I have a long day tomorrow to drive back to Dublin. Rehearsals for a show that's on the day after tomorrow, so I'll spend all tomorrow working, which is great. I like working on my birthday, especially doing something that I'm lucky enough to love. So I'll see you all. You'll hear me all next time. And remember, wherever you are and wherever you go, you can always join me by the fireside.
This show is part of the Head Stuff Podcast Network, a hub for the creative and the curious. Shows are produced in association with Head Stuff and the Podcast Studios Dublin. Find out more or become a member at headstuffpodcasts.com.